And to close out this round, I don't see Jennifer didn't make it. Okay. So to close out this round of our reading, I would like to invite our group's co-founder and leader, Denise Baran Unland, who is, in fact, just this week, the third volume in her series of books about a teenage girl who falls in love with a vampire. Now I know you're thinking, yeah, vampires, no, I'm telling you. This has got the neatest twist to it, that the vampire offers her a trade that allows her to kind of live her fantasies and allows him to live. And this is the third book in that series called Staked. It's wonderful. And I would invite Denise is going to read a portion of the first chapter. Yes? No. What the hell am I? I told you I forgot all my notes at home. Denise, okay.
What I have here is I'm working on the prequel to the series, and it all takes place in most of it in the Victorian era. And the teen girl that he's talking about is she's a 70s teen, and she trades her blood with a Victorian vampire for a trip back into time. And the series actually does end with the third book. And then there's a book that sort of stands outside of it. It's the prequel, and it's the backstory of the characters. And where all backstories to characters begin is with the meeting of the parents. So I sort of changed the point of view. It's like a collection of several novels into one. And this is the meeting of the vampire's parents before he's even born, before there's a vampire. And I chose this one simply because they meet on Christmas Eve, and it's the season, and this is what I'm working on, and that's what I brought. The man in the long frock coat and extra wide cravat had stared at her with peculiar steadiness all night, almost as if goading her to notice him. His defiant confidence intrigued her and caused those sneaky peeks to see if he was still watching. Earlier in the day, Lucetta had caught a glimpse of his all-consuming gaze when she was setting the table for tonight's party. In that moment, she was not the recipient of the gaze. Rather, he had beheld something in his hand with an expression of studious disbelief. Christine, peering into the room, had squealed under her breath, "Oh, an ugly man!" Lucetta couldn't help agreeing with her baby sister, but the man, barely 5 feet tall, hair swept off his forehead, gray blonde strands brushing his high collar, and a severe look to his unlined face, though he was obviously past 40, also had a demeanor about him that made her want to know him, even though his existence had been a mystery to her until just a few hours ago. She had been peeling parsnips and carrots for the soup when their father had burst through the back door. "Set another place for dinner, Mother," Everett had said, grabbing his wife about the waist and hugging her close as she vainly pushed the ham stuffing into the large turkey. "I booked King David's room for Christmas." Prudence shook her spoon at him. "Go along with you," she sternly admonished him, but her gray eyes under her gray head were dancing. "Really, Pops?" Martha asked, setting down her paring knife in surprise, dark blue eyes sparkling with interest, tight chocolate clothes bouncing with excitement, round pink face growing pinker with hope. "To whom?" "Name's Abbott Simons," Everett said as he released Prudence, and Martha's expression drooped. "Interesting chap. New York banker, the self-made sort. Met him at the general store when I ran over for tobacco. He's on his way to Hartford for a meeting and planned to sleep en route in the coach, but I told him that was no way to spend Christmas when Spencer Inn was much more suitable. Oh, and by the way," Everett added, turning toward Martha, "a certain young fellow, oh, say yonder high." Here, Everett raised his hand several inches above his head, and Martha blushed and turned away to hide her smile. "With the most fetching brown eyes dropped in while I was there. I took the liberty of inviting him to Christmas Eve dinner. You wouldn't be minding that, would you?" Martha squealed with delight and leaped up to hug her father, upsetting the bowl of newly peeled potatoes. "Now, lassie, you're neglecting your duties," Everett said, but he looked pleased as Martha scrambled to pick them up. "What'll I tell the guests tonight when there's no famous Spencer Inn fried potato cakes on the table?" "Ralph," Everett said to Eleanor's fiancé, as clean-shaven as Everett, but not nearly as stout, who was holding up jugs of the Inn's signature cider wine, "unhitch my horses, there's a good fellow." Lucetta smiled to herself as she added the vegetables to the giant soup kettles. She understood Everett's enthusiasm. She loved the old inn even more than her father did, if that was possible. With its high-beamed ceilings, wood interior of cedar and pine, red trim, colorful hand-woven rugs, vases filled with dried native foliage, and original needlework draped across chair arms and backs, Spencer Inn lent a welcoming, yet rustic charm, unique to this part of rural Connecticut, where settlers valued stark practicality over style and grace. Lucetta hoped dinner preparations could rest smooth. She hadn't quite finished stitching the lace on Eleanor's pillow, Lucetta's Christmas morning surprise for her eldest sister, as Lucetta had stuffed the pillow full of chamomile and feverfew to ease the severe headaches that often plagued Eleanor. But it wasn't the inn, or even the pillow, that now occupied Lucetta's thoughts. How could someone so successful be all by himself on Christmas Eve? Her heart warmed toward this man. She couldn't wait to meet him. Everett saw to it as they bore the covered dishes of the Christmas Eve feast and laid them at the long rectangular table, which Everett's father, Brinsley Spencer, had built when he founded the inn at the turn of the century. Even before the inn, Everett took enormous pride in the women of his household and showed them off at every available opportunity. Abbott, beaming Everett said, bracing his left hand on his hip and giving his right hand a wide flourish, "These are my daughters, Eleanor, Lucetta, Martha, and Christine." The man's expression did not change as his eyes probed the four young women that had stopped their activity to stand before him. From the thin-boned Eleanor with her flaxen hair neatly piled on the top of her regal head, to Martha, and then to the slightly plump Christine, who shared Martha's dark prettiness. But it was on Lucetta that Abbott's eyes lingered, and this made Lucetta's heart jump. Instinctively, she stood straighter, drawing attention to her already imposing figure. She was taller than everyone in her immediate family, and she had her father's large bones and light hair, except her thick mane hung in soft waves far past her waist. "Girls," Prudence said in an impatient voice as she struggled to get both the turkey platter and her hoops through the dining room door, "I need your help serving." At the sound of Prudence's voice, the smile on Everett's face vanished. "What's the matter with you, standing around letting your mother do all the work?" Everett said, but Lucetta heard the merriment in his voice, even as he pointed to the kitchen door. "Now go." They scurried away to quickly warm the china and fill them with the table's bounties. Vegetable soup and mutton soup, buttermilk cornbread and Irish soda bread with freshly churned butter and pounded cheese for spreading, pumpkin chips and syrup with cream for topping, plum pudding made with raisins and curds, and apple turnovers.
Candy, if you hear that, we'd like you to add some of those to the menu if you don't mind.